Is going on, everyone? We're back in the studio, and today we're talking about the Air 2S again, but this time we're talking about the flight modes. Mainly the difference between normal mode, CineMode, and the difference between CineMode and DJI's older version, tripod mode. Some people preferred the older tripod mode. I personally prefer CineMode. I'll go into the settings I use and talk a little bit about those two in this video. Let's jump right in. All right, as I just mentioned, we're talking about the Air 2S, and as kind of like a reminder, if you notice in the beginning, I only had one prop left on, and that's because if you're ever using these things and turning them on indoors, please take your props off. It's very easy, very simple to do. And before you turn it on, make sure to take off this little guard right here, because when you turn it on, the gimbal does a little rotate thing to make sure everything's good, and you want to make sure it has free range of motion for that. So grab the battery, plug it right in, and now that it's on, I'm going to set it right over there for the purpose of this video. I actually just took the drone and went and set it outside so you had something better to look at than my back while I went ahead doing this. All right, everyone. Now, before we start, let's just kind of get into a few general descriptions of the words you see right here on my screen. Now, the very first one you see is pitch speed. That is strictly related to the gimbal rotation speed. And what that really is how fast it tilts up and down. The higher the number, the higher the degree per second, as they have it listed on here, the faster it moves, and the lower, the slower. So after you know that one, we'll go on to pitch smoothness. Now, what pitch smoothness relates to is how abruptly the gimbal stops its movement. So if you have it set at a low number, it will move very quickly and stop. If you have it set at a high number, it will move very slowly and roll to a stop after you let go of the trigger wheel here on the back. Now we're going to go down to yaw rotation speed. Now this is directly relative to how fast it can move in the air and the degree in which it's allowed to move in the air. So, as it says right here, setting a larger value increases the yaw speed of the aircraft when the control sticks are pressed. So what that means is it allows it to go. So if you put it low, it only allows it to pivot off center a little bit. The higher you put it, the higher it can pivot off center. Now, yaw smoothness is directly, once again, related to how smooth that operation is. Do you want it to jerk and go fast? Or do you want it to barely move in and out, slow in and out of movement? Now, what I'd like to talk about for a second is kind of tripod mode and CineMode, or I guess what used to be tripod mode and is now CineMode, and the differences between those two. The difference between tripod mode and CineMode, from what I've been able to gather, is that CineMode just doesn't go as slow as tripod mode. Tripod mode moved super, super slow, even at full throttle. Now, I understand why some people prefer this. I actually prefer the CineMode because I thought tripod mode was a little too slow. I think CineMode is great because I don't always floor my stick throttle. I usually am very sensitive with the way I control my actual sticks. So I don't really see a problem. CineMode, I've really just decreased a lot of the settings from what it came down to, and I'll go ahead and open up and show you my actual CineMode settings right now and show them in comparison to normal mode, so you'll really know the difference. So those are the basic terms that we're going to talk about, and now we can talk about how they compare and contrast with one another in the modes. So the first thing we'll go over is the pitch speed, which is once again the gimbal speed up and down. As you can see right here, my normal mode, it's set to 21 degrees per second. Now let's show you what that looks like on the actual screen. So this is set in normal mode. This is full hit with the controller wheel right here on the back. Full up, full down. You can see that speed and range of motion. Now, let's go in here and we'll go, once again, advanced gimbal controls. Now, as you can see, we go down to CineMode. My pitch speed is way less. It's only 7 degrees a second. And that being said, I'll show you a direct comparison of that one. So we'll switch it over to CineMode. Now, this is full throttle once again, but look how much slower and smoother it operates. You'll also notice that when I let go, it still moves a little bit. And that's because of the softness or the smoothness, which we'll go over in just a minute. I just wanted to show you the difference. Once again, normal mode, look how fast the gimbal operates. Put it on CineMode, slow it down, make it nice and slow. Now, I have mine personally set at 7 degrees for CineMode. That's what I like. You can go lower if you're trying to go closer to that old tripod mode, but I personally, once again, like it to go a little bit higher because I enjoy pressing the difference in stick throttle to get that super slow motion. Or in this case, the wheel, I've also become accustomed to kind of just using that as see fit. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is the pitch smoothness on here. Now, this is the gimbal rotation smoothness. This is, once again, whenever the smoothness relates to how jerky the motion is of the gimbal. So if you put it all the way down, it will jerk like this, up, down, up, down. If you put it all the way up, it will come to a rolling stop even after you let go of the stick, which is what I showcased a little bit earlier. So if we go back and look at the screen that I'm recording, you can see in CineMode, my pitch smoothness is set at 19. We can talk about it again. If you want it to be closer to that tripod mode, you can move this all the way up to 30. I personally think it's a little too much. I keep it at 19. So that's what I like it at. Once again, when we compare this to the normal mode, it's set at 8. So I showed you just a little while ago the difference. I just moved at 9. Yep. There we go. So I showed you the difference in the speed and smoothness of the gimbal already. Now, the next thing we're going to go down to is the yaw rotation speed. This is what allows your drone to move and operate in the air. And the speed is, once again, related to how quickly it can turn to full throttle. If you put that all the way up, the drone will jerkily and quickly move off to the left or right. If you put it really low, it moves very slow and rolled. Like, once again, with all the other movements, it puts a little drag on the end. So even when you let go, it slows to a pace. Now, if we go back to looking at this, on my normal mode again, my yaw rotation speed is 64 degrees a second. Now, if you look at the yaw rotation speed in sport mode, it's 127. That ought to tell you something. Now, yaw rotation speed for me, 27 degrees a second. I think this is a perfect amount of get up and go, but still slow down and smooth. Once again, you can put it down there really, really low if you're trying to get closer to that tripod mode, but I find 27 degrees right there to be a sweet spot for me perfectly, or for me personally. Now we're going to go on to the very last thing, and that is the yaw smoothness. Now, this is related to the yaw rotation speed. The speed directly gives it how far it can turn in a direction. The smoothness is about how smooth it creates that turn. So if you put the smoothness all the way up, when you crank it to the left, it will smoothly go to the left. If you put it all the way down and crank it to the left, it's going to fly off to the left very quickly. So that's kind of the difference. Once again, you're messing with the smoothness, the way it fades in and fades out of directions or direct stick application that you're giving to the controller. So if we compare this again, yaw smoothness for normal mode is set at 7. My personal CineMode is set to 13. Now, just as I said with every other mode, if you want it closer to tripod mode, you can max these settings out, but I personally think the drone moves way too slow, and I have absolutely no obstacle avoidance. I can personally make the drone move slower by barely pressing the trigger, but if you set those all the way up, there's no way to make it go faster if something last minute was to happen and you needed to get the drone out of the way. That's just my personal opinion on it, and that's what I'm talking about. So I think now I can probably set down the controller for a little bit. So let me just turn all this gear off and I'll come right back in. Now, once again, I kind of talked about the difference between tripod mode and the new CineMode. Tripod mode was a much smoother and slower operation than CineMode, but once again, in my personal opinion, I found it to be a little too slow. Some people swear by it though, so as you go through those settings, once again, if you crank them all the way to their maxes or their minimums, depending on which one you're talking about, it will be much closer to tripod mode, but it still will not be as slow and smooth as tripod mode. So if tripod mode is your deal breaker for this drone, then I don't really know what to tell you. I got the CineMode as close as I like it to be. Once again, stack it to the max, see what you can do with it. Those are my personal settings and how I like to fly this drone to create some super smooth footage for all of my real estate videos. That's it. If you like the information I presented and the way I presented it, please press that like button, mash that subscribe button, and as always, I'll catch you next time.